crowdsourcing over networks.
So thank you. So my name is Saprava. Good morning, everyone. And is that on? Am I audible? Okay. So yeah. So my work, my PhD work, is an intersection. Is in the intersection of computer science and microeconomics. So I work with Professor Narahari. And in this talk, so in particular, I work on the economic problems that arise in the crowdsourcing networks. So this is also a kind of a network. So in the last session, you have heard about networks, graphs. So you can imagine that these nodes are now human agents, and they can potentially manipulate. And I'll discuss about how they can manipulate and what can be done best against that manipulation. So my plan of the talk is I'll start with introducing crowdsourcing through some examples. Then I'll give a brief overview of what this thesis what are the problems that my thesis has addressed. And in particular, I'll pick out one problem, which is the Sybil proofness in evolving social networks, and show the main results and go to the conclusions. So how many of you have heard of this game called IISc game? So yeah, so some volunteers. Yeah. So IISc is a game. So this is a version of an online game where you can log in from your browser, and you'll be randomly matched with another user who has logged in from some other part of the internet, and both of you will be shown some picture like this. And what you'll have to do is to guess what is this picture about. So there are some examples like you can say this is a deer, or you can see some mountains here, and you can type in there, and if both of your answers match, then you get some points. So that's the idea of this game. What is achieved through this game? The designer essentially builds up some database on what this image is about. So imagine that this is very difficult for any image processing algorithm or a machine learning algorithm to figure out what this is. There a deer here or a mountain here? It's very difficult to figure out for machines, while it's very easy for human beings to tag this image. And essentially that's what this game is trying to do, imagining that if there are two people in different part of the internet agrees on this image being an image of a deer, then it should be an image of a deer. So that's one example of crowdsourcing. The other example we all know is about Wikipedia. If you see the web pages, the Wikipedia pages, nobody actually taken the initiative to contribute to the whole of Wikipedia, but everybody's contribution counts in the Wikipedia. So, and that makes it the global encyclopedia. So those are the two examples without money. So there are websites called the Innocentive, which is essentially a platform for the people who are trying to get their jobs done and people who are job seekers. So here you can see that some of these tasks. So someone has posted this task with a very detailed description and with a prize money. So if you are capable enough of doing this task, and there is a judgment procedure at how this job should be done, and when you say that this job is successful, you get a huge amount of money. So that is a mechanism with money. So that is also crowdsourcing, because these organizations might not be able to either get so many human resources, or may not have the expertise of solving this kind of problems. So what they do, they outsource, essentially crowdsource, and get this job done. And the last example of that of this slide is the DARPA Red Balloon Challenge. I'll discuss about this in a more detail, because that will be the theme of my talk. So in 2009, the Defense Research Organization, known as DARPA, has introduced this problem called the DARPA Network Challenge, which is more popularly known as the DARPA Red Balloon Challenge. What they did was they put these 10 red weather balloons in 10 different locations in continental United States, and they are so far located that it will be impossible for a single individual or even an organization to travel to all the places and find the location of the balloons. The challenge was the following: you find the location, the exact location, coordinates of all these balloons, and you get a huge amount of reward, $40,000. And you can readily see that this might be a toy example, but the goal of this exercise was to get the power of crowdsourcing, that how people can collaborate with each other and get a solution done in a collaborative manner. So I'll come back to this example later and the solutions of it. So let me just introduce why we consider this as a game theoretic problem. So we imagine that all the participants, the crowd, is kind of strategic. That means they have a predefined utility function or payoff that they are always trying to maximize. And what can be done? So they will pick their actions so that that maximizes their payoff. So in that kind of a strategic setting, what can be done? So in my thesis, I have actually investigated 3 different problems in crowdsourcing. One of them is skill elicitation, the structural manipulation, and efficient team formation. For the purpose of today, I'll just focus on this problem in the structural manipulation part, and I'll talk about Sybil proofness. So let's get back to that problem. It turns out that the red balloon challenge was solved by this team from MIT Media Lab, and the way they solved it is through crowdsourcing. So the main theme of, or the philosophy of the solution was they designed a web page where you can register yourself, and if you know the location of the balloon, you can directly give the input, or if you don't, then you can spread the message by inviting your friends. So if you imagine that some of your friends would be able to answer, find the location of some of the balloons, you invite them, they can in turn invite their friends, and it gets spreaded over the network. And a specific example, and there is a reward sharing scheme as well. So suppose Alice invited Bob, invited Carol and Dave, and Dave found the balloon. So he will get, so there are $4,000 per balloon because there are $40,000 and there are 10 balloons. So half of that total reward goes to Dave, 2,000, then 1,000, 500, and it keeps on decreasing in a geometric fashion. And because of this geometric series, you will never spill over the $4,000 budget. So there are 2 things that needs to be noticed here. So there is an incentive for each of these agents to participate, because if you know the location of the balloon, you get the maximum amount of money. So you have an incentive to search the balloon. And also if you don't know, you have an incentive to forward, because that gives you some passive reward. So just for spreading the message, you are getting some payoff. So though this mechanism sounds very plausible, we'll show that there are certain problems. There are some flaws in this mechanism. So imagine what can Carol do. So imagine that this is a setting where everybody is getting registered online, and it's very easy to create fake accounts. So Carol can multiply her identity by creating 2 fake nodes, and she can get away with $750 more. So this kind of problem is called Sybil attacks. So these fake nodes are called Sybils, and this is undesirable, because now Bob is getting very less amount of money. This is not what he deserves, and in fact Alice. And if Carol makes more and more Sybil nodes, Bob gets less and less amount of money. So we want to stop this. We want a mechanism that stops Sybil attack. Maybe you can argue that the previous mechanism was not that good. That's why this kind of problem happened. What if taking one other naive reward scheme? So instead of starting from the leaf towards the root, I start from the root, give a lot of money to Alice, and then keep on decreasing as we go near the leaf. Now you can stop Sybil attack by properly designing that this reward scheme, that if you create fake nodes, you won't be able to gain anything more. But there will be a different problem here. Now consider Bob, Carol and Dave together. The total amount of money that they are going to get now is less than if they collapse to a single node and actually report the location of the balloon. So this problem is called node collapse attack. So in fact, this is the problem that we have noticed in our work. So the purpose of crowdsourcing is not to just get the answer, it also wants to know which network gave the answer. So the network structure is hidden here. So we don't want Sybil attacks, we don't want node collapse attacks. So now the question is, let us put down what are the desired properties that we want. The first property that we have already said, that in the original mechanism, the reward that you are going to get should be more than if you create fake nodes. Together with your fake nodes, the reward is smaller. And we also don't want collapse proofness. That means you are better off by not collapsing with someone else, not colluding with someone else and reducing to a single node. So these are the two very important properties. And there is a notion in game theory which says it's a dominant strategy implementation, which what it means in plain English is these properties hold irrespective of what the other people are doing. So it does not matter whether the other people are creating fake nodes or not. It's still beneficial for you to stick to truthfulness. And so, and of course, you need some kind of a participation guarantees. Why should I participate in this game if I don't get any kind of positive reward? So this property essentially says, this strict contribution rationality says that your reward should be always positive, and you can weaken it by saying that the rewards are non-negative, where you allow the people to get 0 rewards as well. So, and also you should not be spilling over the budget too much. So now the question is, can we satisfy all these properties simultaneously? And the first result that we have shown is no. There is an impossibility result. You can't satisfy this downstream Sybil proofness, that is fake node attacks, collapse attacks, and SCR simultaneously. You can weaken this property of SCR to WCR, which is weak contribution rationality, but this property should be satisfied by a very restrictive class of mechanisms, which is winner takes all. That means you give the whole amount of money to the person who found the balloon and pay nothing to the others. So that is also not useful, because there won't be any incentive for people to forward the task now. So if I don't get any reward for forwarding the task, why should I forward it at all? So both of these, so we have a kind of a roadblock. So when you have roadblocks, you try to find some escape routes. So one escape route, which is shown by these people, Babayov and others, is weakening the notion of dominant strategy. So you remember that we said that it does not matter for our properties, it does not matter what the other people are doing, it's still beneficial for you to not create fake nodes. They say it's beneficial for you not to create fake nodes, given that others are also not creating fake nodes. It's a little bit weaker, but you have some escape routes there. What we did is we kept the property, the equilibrium in dominant strategies, but we weakened the notion of truthfulness or fake node creation. So we say that now you can create fake nodes, but by creating fake nodes, you won't be able to gain more than epsilon fraction of your original reward. So that's what we call as epsilon Sybil proofness. So it's still Sybil proof, but to an approximation. And we show that you can design mechanisms. So just by weakening one property, you can show that epsilon DSP, that weakened Sybil proofness, approximate Sybil proofness, collapse proofness, budget balance, and SCR can be satisfied. Now there are lots of mechanisms, which one to pick, and it depends on what your goals are. So we pointed out 2 specific goals. There should be a specific incentive for task forwarding. So if my child gets M amount of money, I, as a recruiter of him, should get at least delta times M amount of money. So that is what this property says, the delta SCR. The second property is the incentive for task execution. So if I find the balloon myself, I should get at least gamma fraction of the total reward. And under certain conditions on this gamma and delta, which makes it budget balance and so on, you can satisfy all these desirable properties, epsilon DSP, that is approximate Sybil proofness, delta SCR, gamma secured, and budget balance, and it is satisfied, it's equivalent to a mechanism which is gamma delta geometric mechanism. What is that? It gives the gamma fraction of the total reward to the leaf node and keeps on decreasing with factored delta. So delta, delta squared, delta cube, and so on. And that essentially is the gamma delta geometric mechanism. So we can actually characterize the space of all these the mechanisms which satisfy all these properties, and also minimizes the cost for the designer. And that is given by this gamma delta geometric mechanism. And in addition, this mechanism is also collapse proof. So essentially, just by weakening one property, you can satisfy all these desirable properties, and this is the mechanism which characterizes this space. So I'll not go into the details of this mechanism. I'll just want to point out this. Here we have plotted those parameters, the delta, gamma, and epsilon, and the area below this blue curve is essentially the technical condition under which our characterization result holds. And what we want to show is that MIT mechanism is a special case of this characterization result, where your gamma is 0.5 and delta is 0.5, now you can quantitatively say that what was that MIT mechanism satisfying? It was satisfying not Sybil proofness, but an approximate Sybil proofness with the approximation factor being 1. And okay, so in fact I could not present much. So there are more results, more details of this problem. And if you are interested, this paper appeared in the web interaction, in the conference of web interaction and network economics this year, last year. So, and yeah, so there essentially what, to summarize, what we have shown is we have introduced this property called collapse proofness, and we have also proposed a approximate dominant strategy implementation, and we have shown that under certain resource critical optimization, where the optimization goal is to minimize the total cost, you can have a precise characterization of those mechanisms. So putting everything in one single line, one can only hope for approximate Sybil proofness in dominant strategies. So that will be one take-home message for this particular work. And there are some future works which we are also working on. And one specific thing is, so these were kind of atomic tasks where you can either find the balloon or may not find the balloon. So it's a 0-1 kind of a task. What happens if you have continuous flow of information? As you go along, run this experiment, you'll learn about different locations where it's more probable and less probable, and those kind of things, how you can incentivize. So those kind of problems is very much there in our future work. So that's all from my part. Thank you very much.
Questions? So I had one.
Yeah.
Intuitively, so for example, in this balloon example, is it reasonable to say that in your model you're assuming that the final reward at the leaf node, I mean, whenever a leaf node is rewarded, certain individuals have access to only one of those paths? That is, like parents cannot have multiple.
Okay, so you are talking about whether it should be a tree or it can be a directed acyclic graph.
Right, in the sense that if it's very dense, if the problem set is larger,
yeah,
then you might have multiple possibilities, right?
Yeah, so but the system can actually disallow.
So your results actually carry over, or?
No, so there would be a problem of, so all these results are applicable to one particular winning chain. So for multiple paths, you won't have one single winning chain. So somehow we'll have to split the rewards. And yeah, so this work does not consider that multiple path. We only consider trees. Yeah, but for DAGs, yeah, so we'll have to see how we can effectively share, extend this model.
Yeah. Just a trivial question. The MIT people, what were their observations? Did they observe these things?
Yeah, so yeah, indeed. So that's a very good point. So when they won the competition, so their deal was they will get the money, and that excess amount of money, whichever is left over, they'll give it for charity. So it so happened that there were certain nodes who were in the winning chain, but they did not show up when the rewards are being shared. So essentially, the charity get a lot of money. Yeah, so that this kind of Sybil attacks actually happens in practice.
Next talk is by Nitin Shivshankar, and he's going to be talking about more snail complexes.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everybody. The topic of my my work here in IISc has been Moss-Snail complexes, their computations and applications. So I'll first quickly define what I mean by a Moss-Snail complex. So Moss-Snail complex is defined for, it's a real valued function on a two-dimensional or a three-dimensional manifold, at least for the cases that we are considering. And in this case, you see a function color map and shown as a height map over here. So it uses the concept of a gradient line. So basically, a gradient line is a line that tracks the path of steepest descent of the function at every point. And the Mossmale complex is then defined as a partition of the domain based on the sources and the sinks of these gradient lines. Right. So Mossmale complexes have been very popular in visualization applications, and there's good reason for that. And one of the good things is that it's based on sound theory. You have the concept of gradient lines and all that coming in there, giving you telling you what to expect from the definition. The second reason why it's popular is that it allows the notion of controlled simplification, which gives you multi-resolution hierarchies, which is also useful in visualization applications. And the third reason that it's quite popular is that it gives you the certain geometry and combinatorial structures that are associated with it. So as you go on, you will see some of these ideas in the talk. And to take a few examples of the works that have leveraged this data structure, I'm quoting from a paper by Laney and others, where they tried to understand the structure of the turbulent mixing layer in hydrodynamic instabilities. And there they used the Mossmale complex of the mixing layer and to characterize bubble-like structures within the mixing layer. And another example is by Giulassi and others, where they extracted the core structure of the porous medium data sets using the Mossmale complex by simplifying what is known as the distance fields. And the key contributions of this thesis are in parallel algorithms to compute the Mossmale complex in two-dimensional domains. And this work is it depends on a few key lemmas, one of which is the order independent pairing lemma, and second of which is the order independent merging lemma. And the other contributions of this thesis are a parallel algorithm for three-dimensional domains, which extends the earlier pairing lemma, as well as provides a good algorithm to traverse the what is known as the two-sided and one-sided gradient structure. So the third part of the thesis is the application of the Mossmale complexes to study cosmic wave simulations, and the fourth is an application to study protein surface similarity. And both of these works are in progress. I won't talk about those in very much detail. In fact, I'll be talking about the first work in some detail only. Moving on. Now, just to give you some relevant background, the Mossmale complex, we earlier defined it as a partition based on the sources and the sinks of these gradient lines. So when you look at the sources and the sinks of the gradient lines, they are commonly known as critical points, and they are precisely points where the gradients vanish. And in 2D, there exist three types of critical points, mainly the minimum, the saddle, and the maximum. And in Morse theory, one associates the concept of a Morse index for each critical point, which roughly put, it counts the number of principal directions in which gradients converge to the given critical point. So for a minimum, this index is 0. For a saddle, this index is 1. And for a maximum, this index is 2. Right. So now there's the other theory of called discrete Morse theory, which was developed by Foreman and others. And this is what we base our work upon. And specifically, we use the notion of a discrete gradient pair, which is defined for cell complexes. Cell complexes are commonly triangle meshes or quad meshes or any such mesh that you might consider. And a gradient pair is a pairing of two cells that differ in dimension by 1 and are incident upon each other. For instance, you have this vertex and this edge, and you can call them a gradient pair, and it's represented by an arrow that orients itself from the lower dimensional cell to the higher dimensional cell. Another example is this red arrow, where you have an edge and a face, and again represented by this red arrow here. A sequence of such gradient pairs such that the head of one is incident upon the tail of the next, and one that is also acyclic is referred to as a gradient path. And when you have a collection of such gradient paths, you would call them a gradient field. And if you notice that some of the cells remained unpaired in our field, and these in discrete Morse theory are referred to as the critical cells. And one maps the concept of the Morse index to the dimension of the cell over here. So here you have an index 0 critical cell, or the vertex, an index 1 critical cell or the saddle, and an index 2 critical cell or the maximum in 2D. And using this notion of the discrete Morse theory, you define the discrete Morse-Mail complex as a partition based on the sources and the sinks of the gradient paths. Also, what I referred to earlier was the geometry that we can associate with the Morse-Mail complex. One such geometry is the ascending manifold. It's the set of gradient paths that converge to a given critical cell. Similarly, you can talk about the descending manifold. It's the set of gradient paths that originate from a given critical cell. And another useful concept is the concept of the combinatorial structure, which is a graph where the nodes are the critical cells, and the edges exist if there is a path that connects them, a gradient path that connects them. So moving on, now I'll describe the algorithm in a little more detail. The algorithm works for a given scalar function that is sampled at the vertices of a given mesh. And the first step of the algorithm is to recursively extend the function to a function capital F on all the cells of the given mesh. And as I said before, it works recursively, as you see in this example. And then using this function, we compute the discrete gradient pairs with the notion of steepest descent in mind. And this gives you a directed acyclic graph, which is traversed, and this reveals the connections between the critical cells and therefore the combinatorial structure. And it also reveals the geometry of the ascending and descending manifolds. The key contributions of this particular work was a robust extension of small f to capital F. The second contribution was a parallel algorithm to compute these gradient pairs. And the third major contribution was a method whereby we can extend this algorithm such that we can work with datasets that do not fit in memory and still get the Morse-Mail complex of the unified domain. Right. So we'll begin with the first step of the algorithm. So the first step of the algorithm begins by extending this function that we sampled on the vertices to a function that is on all the cells of the mesh. And that happens by this formula. And I'll explain this with so as you see, there are two terms over here, namely tau of alpha and sigma alpha tau. And what these are basically is tau of alpha is the highest facet of a given cell alpha, and sigma alpha tau is the highest face of alpha that is discharged from tau of alpha. And by highest, I mean the ordering induced by capital F. And this, as I said earlier, works recursively. Let's look at it with the means of an example. Since we are performing an extension, capital F of A is nothing but small f of A for a given vertex. For a given edge, you take the function value at the highest vertex plus epsilon times the function value of the vertex that is disjoint from the highest vertex. The same definition works for another edge. And for a face, you would get the function to be the function value of the highest face, highest facet of the face, and that would be the edge AB, followed by the vertex that is disjoint from the edge AB. And it's not hard to see that by this we get, in fact, a total order on all the cells. And we use this order and with the notion of steepest descent in mind, and we design a gradient pairing algorithm, which proceeds as follows. For each cell alpha, we look to pair alpha with its lowest cofacet beta, and thus that alpha is the highest facet of beta. And just let's look at it by means of an example. And if you take the edge AB, and the algorithm works by first looking at the set of cofacets that are attached to AB, and then it picks the lowest cofacet. And the key result that we proved is that this can in fact happen independently. That is to say that if we pick the pair AB and ABD, there would be no other cell that would pick ABD. And the third major contribution that I spoke about earlier was our method by which we can scale this algorithm to work on large data sets that don't fit in memory. And we adopt a divide and conquer approach. And we first begin by subdividing the given domain to subdomains. And the key step that we adopt over here is that gradient pairs that cross a given shared boundary are artificially marked as critical on both data sets. And we compute the Morse-Mail complex of these subdivided data sets. And these data sets can be then put together by the process of topological simplification, which gives us the unified Mossmel complex. And what we prove is that what we get is not only the correct Mossmel complex of the unified domain, but also that we can carry out these simplifications in any order and we'll still get the same result. Right. So with the algorithm in place, I'll now move on to describe some of the experiments that we have done to validate this method in terms of runtimes. So we implemented these algorithms for two-dimensional structured grids, and we primarily considered two classes of data sets. One was synthetic, where we could we control the parameters in terms of the number of critical points and so on and so forth to validate the algorithm. And we used two data sets mainly, the WGauss and the sinusoid. The WGauss is a very simple two-dimensional Gaussian curve that is centered on a given grid, and it's weighted by a cosine curve. And because of the cosine curve, we get these concentric rings which manifest themselves in the Mossmel complex as a set of critical points that lie on the ridge. And this, as you can clearly see, there exist features in terms of the data set, but they would then be part of a large number of critical cells which need to be filtered. And this kind of stresses the algorithm in terms of the number of critical points. The sinusoid is a very simple data set where, which gives you the other end of the spectrum, where you're looking at a simple sin x plus sin y over here. And we considered a real world data set, that is the Hurricane Isabel data set. So Hurricane Isabel was a hurricane that hit the coast of Florida in 2003. And this is of a simulation of the same hurricane, where the various parameters such as wind velocity, pressure, temperature, and other things are available on the surface of the land. And right, so we ran our algorithm to compute the Mossmel complex and simplified for all time steps and all variables. And we performed the experiments with this configuration, that is mainly an Intel Xeon 2 GHz with 4 cores and 8 GB of RAM. And since our algorithms were parallel, we were able to implement them on a graphics processing unit or a GPU. And we used an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 260 with the following configuration. And for this configuration, we found that we needed to subdivide our domains into 4K cross 4K blocks. And we ran our experiments in using a GPU-only configuration as well as CPU, and as well as a combined approach. Right. So I'll just talk about the WGauss data set that we have over here and look at a couple of graphs on that. And this graph shows the scaling for the WGauss data set for varying data sizes. And these are averaged over many runs. And we see that there's almost a near linear scaling in terms of the running time. And that is represented by the last column over here. And we also validated in terms of the number of cores, where we timed the various stages of algorithm. And for the Hurricane Isabel dataset, we were able to track the eye of the hurricane using the magnitude of wind velocity, and it took less than 0.5 seconds for each time step to execute. Okay, there was a video here. I'm sorry, it's not working. So moving on. So now, the last part of the thesis was the applications that that's still ongoing. So I'll just give you a brief idea of what applications we are pursuing and what are the challenges that are involved over here. And one of the first application that we are looking to apply our efficient methods is to study the structure of the cosmic web simulations. And what are they? They basically they try to study the large-scale evolution of the universe. And more specifically, what this boils down to is in terms of studying the structure of voids, walls, and filaments, and clusters within the simulation data sets. And this fits very well into the framework of Mossmel complexes in 3D, where we're looking at maximum, saddles, and minima, and so on and so forth. And the key goal is that we want to be able to extract features at multiple scales. So what do I mean by that? So one of the first problems is we don't even know whether we have features at a given for a given time step. And the third is that the second challenge is that we have features existing in multiple scales. So if you look at a volume rendering of the given time step, we see that there exists large filamentary-like structures, but at a different scale, when you filter, we see that there are small filaments that exist within the wall-like structures of the given time step. And the challenge here is to extract these filament-like structures that exist at multiple scales. And the second application that we are considering right now is the molecular surface analysis. And this is based on the skin surface model by Edelman and others. The goal over here is to extract feature points based on the Mossmel complex and curvature. And we're looking at filtering possible pairings and designing a good scoring function to match a given query shape to different regions of the given overall shape. Right. So that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. The key contributions were of this thesis were Mossmel complex algorithms for 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions that are implementable on typical desktop systems, and which make synergistic use of both the CPU and the GPU. And the second part of the thesis is in terms of applications, where we're looking to apply these algorithms to study the structure of the cosmic web simulations as well as protein surfaces. And long term, we're looking at what I mentioned earlier was that the Mossmel complex allows you to generate simplification hierarchies, and we're looking at the structure of these hierarchies and understand them in a more comprehensive sense is a long-term direction that one can consider. And also the interpretation as well as the algorithms in higher dimensions are quite non-trivial at this point. So thanks. In terms of the memory that's available on the, if you're using GPU on GPU or if you're just using CPU, it's totally on the memory.
So since you can compute the critical points just by a local instruction, does it make sense to kind of have a smarter partition that ensures the number of criticalities divided uniformly?
That is possible, yes. The issue there is that you also need to do path tracing, which I've not talked about over here. They are quite simple graph algorithms, but you still need to do them, and you need your data sets to sit in memory for that. So that becomes a problem.
Probably I have a very naive question. When you're talking about the source and sink for the gradient, don't you have uncertainty in terms of determining which is the source and which is the sink? Or do you assume that there is a fixed point which is given to you and you don't know what you know?
It's based on the neighborhood. Yes, you look at the neighborhood and you look at the set of vertices that are connected in your mesh, and you have an input scalar field given to you. So you look at whether you're lower or higher based on the given manifold. So that is how it's typically done. And
But that depends on your mesh spacing as well.
yes, it depends on your mesh spacing as well. Yes, there is a certain uncertainty that will exist, and that is why you do filtering and simplification.
Next talk is by Ravi Prasad Jagannath, and he's going to be talking about novel computational techniques for image reconstruction in diffuse optical tomography.
I'm audible? Thank you. Today I'm going to talk about diffuse optical tomography. Mainly this is it's an inverse problem, comes under one of the inverse problems.
You mind flipping it a little higher?
Hello? Diffuse optical tomography requires regularization, and how to get an optimal choice of regularization for DOT is what I am going to present. Outline is I will give you just brief background of DOT and little bit of theory, and how we can get optimal regularization parameter and reference. What is DOT? DOT is one of the emerging medical imaging modality in which this tissue is illuminated with near infrared light, and from an array of detectors the boundary data is collected. From that we try to reconstruct the optical properties, internal optical properties. So this is a non-ionizing, non-invasive medical imaging modality. Once we collect this boundary data, we use a mathematical model to reconstruct what is there inside. Actually, what is the advantage of this medical imaging modality is it gives pathophysiological state of the tissue. And one more thing is we can do both 2D and 3D imaging. Mainly DOT is used for imaging breast and brain tissues. What is the current state now is the first picture is typical mammogram. There is some calcification abnormalities there, but which is not clear. The second one is ultrasound. It shows some cysts, but what is there inside is not clear. But when you take this MRI, you clearly see the high vasculature representing the tumor. So every imaging modality has some of the other advantages and disadvantages. So that's why we are using this DOT, which gives this functional information. And yeah, what do you mean by functional information? It gives while light traversing through the tissue, it gets absorbed and scattered. Main absorbers are hemoglobin and oxyhemoglobin, and water also. See, tumor has high hemoglobin content, low oxygen concentration, and high water content. So these functional information can be obtained from DOT, which is not available even in MRI and mammograms. Now, this graph shows the advantage and disadvantages of DOT. You can see this clinical ultrasound, MRI, mammogram show very good resolution, sub-millimeter to be precise, but DOT has like 5 mm resolution, but it has high contrast. Contrast means the diseased and the healthy tissue you can clearly distinguish, which may not be possible in the traditional imaging modality. Now the theory, how this DOT problem is solved. It has two aspects. One is forward problem, another is inverse problem. So forward problem for us is if you know the optical property, can we get this boundary data? So another aspect is inverse problem. If you know the boundary data, and can we estimate the optical properties inside? So for solving this forward problem, we use this diffusion equation. So if you see the right top corner, so a laser near infrared light is shined on somebody's hand, and that actually is diffusing. And that's why we use this diffusion equation for modeling the light propagation through the biological tissues. And this is the equation we use, and the parameter phi is the photon density, and mu a and d of r, these are the absorption and scattering coefficient. D of r is optical diffusion coefficient. One of the solution I have shown in the bottom right corner. For solving this, we use FEM, and we get the model data, means the boundary data is actually complex for us. We convert it to real and amplitude and phase. So model data for us is logarithm of amplitude and phase. Now, what is inverse problem? If you know the boundary data y depends on the optical property mu, and now it is just G is the operator which operates on mu to give you boundary data. But to get back mu, we just have to invert it. But this inversion is not simple. It is a nonlinear function. So, and it has very bad characteristics, like it is ill-posed. What do you mean by ill-posed? Because you can see the diagram right side. Even the small changes in the data can cause large changes in the parameters, and it is ill-conditioned also. The singular value ratio is very bad, and it is ill-determined also, because we have only limited boundary measurements. You cannot have infinite boundary measurement, and because of this, we don't have any unique solution. Only we may estimate approximate solution among the many solutions that we have. That's why we need regularization. How to solve this problem? A little bit of mathematics. So first, if G model data G mu is function of mu, so we wrote this Taylor series. Mind it, this J is the is a matrix now, Jacobian. So we have this update equation. J delta mu is data difference, where delta mu is the update in the optical property, and the data difference is difference between the model data and the experimental data. So this is simple for Taylor series expansion, but this J is very ill conditioned, and the data Y has lot of noise. So we cannot directly solve this. So we have a lot of other minimization schemes. One of the most popular is techno minimization. So wherein we, in least square sense, we match this model data with the experimental data, and the typical update we use is this pseudo inverse kind of a thing, where lambda is the regularization which is required every iteration to be determined, and lambda not only actually dictates the nature of the solution that we are going to get. So the overall outline of image reconstruction is, we start off with a guess for the background optical properties, and we solve forward problem and ensemble this big Jacobian matrix. So in order to match this data and experimental data and model data, using this update equation delta mu. So every iteration this is matched, and when there is a relative error of less than 2%, we just stop. So once again, I want to emphasize this lambda is required every iteration because of the ill condition of the Jacobian matrix. The ill conditioned here Jacobian mainly is because of the multiple scattering the light suffers while traversing through the tissue. So I did a brief study of how this regularization affects the nature of the solution. So left top is the target, and the right gives the profile along this line, dotted line that I have shown. So if it is lambda, every iteration, if it is used 10, you have this solution, and 0.1 if you decrease, the noise in the image is increased. Clearly you can see that if you want high contrast, you have to use less regularization. But if you use more regularization, you get a blurred image. So now which one to choose? So my work is to find out the optimal regularization scheme by which we can get a better reconstruction. In the literature, so for solving such a problem, we have this L-curve method and GCV method, the generalized cross validation. The literature people have shown that L-curve is not working in DOT because you don't get sharp corners. GCV also is very suboptimal for solving such a problem. So we are trying to use this minimal residual method. So it's which solves a equation like this. It's a linearized equation which requires regularization lambda. This minimal residual method, let's call it as MRM, it solves this minimization problem without inverting the big matrix. The computationally it is very efficient, and it uses regularization lambda also. So for any using this algorithm, now this objective function which is y minus g mu, if you have this previous iteration and the next update, this update can be obtained from the minimal residual method. Using that update, we can find the difference in the model data. So now at every iteration we know j, delta and lambda. If we know using this, we can find out omega of lambda. What I want to say is omega of lambda is now omega, the objective function is just the function of the real parameter lambda. provided you know the data difference and the Jacobian. So now if you plot this graph omega, so it continuously decreases, but somewhere around 0 it increases, so which gives a minima. So if you see this previous slide, that gives the minima for the objective function, which can be used as a optimal regularization. So this regularization, that is what is represented as lambda star there. If we for finding which lambda to be used, I have used this simplex direct search method, Nelder's-Mint method, which is a gradient-free method. This is one of the results. See here in the target, you can see the two anomalies are placed very close, which is like just 5 mm separation is there, and it is symmetrically placed around origin, where the sensitivity of DOT is very low. So, and the results are compared with the GCV, and the numbers in the parenthesis is the noise added, simulated experiment. So, the MRM performs better than GCV, which is clear from the profile plot also. So, even with the increased noise also, this MRM based regularization is performing better than the GCV. The same thing, same algorithm was compared with the GCV for a phantom study, real life phantom study, and here also it performs the much better than the GCV. So, in conclusion, regularization parameter, if you use heuristically, introduces unwarranted bias in the reconstructed image. So, an automated selection, which is based on MRM, gives a better resolution characteristic. And one good thing about this is it does not require any prior information about the noise or anything. And this it outperforms the existing GCV, popular GCV method. And but the main problem with this method is it is computationally expensive, because with every choice of the lambda we have to solve forward problem. So if you minimize the bound in which the lambda is searched, that is regularization is searched, we can address that problem also. So this result was published in Journal of Biomedical Optics. If you want further details, it is there. As part of my research work, I have done other problems also, like first one is in image guided diffuse optical tomography, where the prior information from MRI is taken. So in that, if you use approximate regularization for the different regions in the breast, you can get a better reconstruction than keeping all the regions same refractive index. So this was published in IEEE. Next one, just we have submitted this, an efficient gradient-free simplex method for image guided DOT, wherein we try to reduce in the reduced optical parameter space, we want to reconstruct using a very simple technique instead of following the traditional Jacobian type reconstruction. And lastly, this I wanted to use this non-quadratic penalization for this inverse problem, in which I have tried to come up with a simple framework wherein we can include this L1, Cauchy and German-Makler type of penalty functions into this image reconstruction. So I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge my advisors and chairmen of my IMI and IISc and my scholarship and my group. Thank you.
So these were essentially your scheme was validated on phantom data sets, right? So in general, what is the sense? How well does it carry over to real data sets where you have other complex? It's a more complex scenario, right?
Right. But the phantom study is obtained from real life thing only, right? So and simulation it is working. So in a way, they are compared
so
both.
the belief is that a couple of phantoms is good enough to characterize.
Right. But we don't have any experiment set up. So we have one set.
Okay, thanks. The last speaker in this session is Deepak, and you will be talking about methods to segment text readings from images.
Good afternoon. I will be presenting a talk on segmenting image for text algorithms. I want to explain about my research. Initially, I was working on text localization and segmentation on scene images. Scene images are camera captured where in a scene text will be there. So I was trying to locate text in a scene image. So in 2011, there was ICDAR conference was conducted. In ICDAR is International Conference on Document Analysis and Recognition. In that, they organize competition for robust reading systems, and in that robust reading systems, there was a new task added for bound digital images. So, whatever work I was doing, I just transformed into the bound digital image and tried to work on that. So, what are bound digital images? I will be explained. Then that gave a platform for me to explore further algorithms in exploring text detection as well as recognition. The overview of this talk will be, I will explain what is bound digital image, and this is the text localization and segmentation algorithm which I proposed and did one in the computation. The other three algorithms are word recognition from the located text, and we have benchmarked those word images to know the maximum achievable recognition rate. And one of the important mention I want to say is these algorithms are simple, and these algorithms use simple image processing techniques which act as a catalyst to increase the recognition rate as well as F-score in the algorithm. A bound digital image is created by overlaying text. So I used to do some designing tasks whenever I had a few free time, but I didn't know that they have coined a name called bound digital image. For creation of bound digital image, we can use Photoshop, GIMP, Paint. These are example images from the training data set which were provided for the competition. This H2 Canny minimum spanning tree. This is the first part of the algorithm. A bound digital image is provided. It will be in the color plane, which consists of red, green, and blue plane. As I was doing on working on grayscale, I just split into three parts. Instead of averaging all the RGB, I just split it into three parts, and I processed two different methods: R2 binarization and Canny edge map. R2 binarization is a global thresholding algorithm which was proposed in 1976 or 79 by R2. It uses grayscale image and based in the histogram, and it plots histogram and uses the probability of pixels in the histogram to estimate the threshold and binarize into 1 and 0. And we will get components, text component and the background. In Canny edge map, it uses the gradient, and based on the weight of the gradient, it will threshold. Canny proposed a method to threshold. When I obtain a binarized image, it will have components. To retain some of the components, I use edge pixels which are generated by Canny edge map. If the boundary of the component and the edge pixels are overlapped, I will retain those components. Otherwise, I will remove those components. This pipeline is done for all the three planes. Once the retained component, we thin the image and find the central node of that thinned component. So here I want to say that in document imaging, for segmenting text and graphics, they use one-eye diagram, where basically they create edges and form a one-eye diagram. Instead of using those, I thought of using minimum spanning tree. So with the minimum spanning tree, I measure the average width of the edge, average length of the edge, and based on the height threshold I will remove those, and the length of the tree edge I will remove some of the components, and I will iterate once again as it is a two process, two layer minimum spanning tree process. I obtain the minimum modified thinned image. With that thinned image I will retrieve back the components, and I will merge all the three layers components, and I will group connected components horizontally. If there is any overlapping between the components, I will remove the overlapped components, and selected components where the segmented text, and vertically aligning we got localized text. This is the test image. This is the result of my method. Due to small pixels, you can clearly see that the details over I and small, they are removed. And while text graphics, some of them are very close, so the length of those edges were less, and it was retained. So during the computation period, the grayscale were in the computation period time, and white colored table shows that they were in the open mode. This is the results obtained from the computation data set website, and in that during computation time I had a score of 76%, which was much better than the other computed algorithms. So here the crux was the minimum spanning tree, which I used for retaining the text component. So this completes the segmenting the text from the image. Now I thought why not I should work for word recognition. There was another task for word recognition, but I could not participate in that task. So these are all some of the off-the-shelf OCRs I used for, and they are available as a professional and open source for my other tasks. From this stage, I will only concentrate on recognition of words from the crop word images. These images are obtained from born digital images. These are also known as crop word images. We can also obtain from the scene. Presently, I thought why can't I work on word recognition rate in that task. So there are some problems in born digital images. While placing a text, they are to remove the aliasing property. The text will have anti-aliased with the background. So I thought there is a Paula transform which is used for display in CRT systems to improve the contrast enhancement. This is the histogram of a grayscale image from the old images, and when I apply Atsu threshold, earlier I explained global thresholding method, some of the components due to anti-aliasing they got merged. When we change the gamma, we could clearly see that somehow there is a breaking in the component. As we further increase the gamma value, the components become thin. You can clearly see that stroke width, width of the text component reduces as we change the value of the gamma. This method is applied on grayscale images. This is the threshold measurement proposed by Atsu and this Paola. This was in this method initially I will start, I had varied with the gamma value as well as stroke width. For combining, I developed an algorithm, general algorithm, where before performing power law transform, I will obtain a binarized image and I will estimate the stroke width as well as whether the gamma has gone ahead of is greater than 5. These parameters were obtained after experimenting. If the result is no, I will increase the gamma value and once again binarize it till stroke width of the image, binarized word image is less than 8 or the gamma has crossed more than 5. If any one is true, I will pass it to a OCR engine. Off the shelf OCR engine is used for recognition. This is the results obtained from the website, competition website. So, in the participate method was 62% word recognition rate, and which was very less than the baseline. They used ABI OCR reader for the cropped word cropped word images to recognize the words. So, for simple power law transform or image processing has improved recognition rate of 20%, and this edit distance is there will be ground truth text and generated text from the OCR. The number of addition, deletions and insertions are measured and it is counted as edit distance and it is normalized over the data set. So, instead of grayscale, I found that very little exploration was done for scene images, cropped scene word image recognition, and they have used computer vision approaches to recognize those word images. But the recognition result is very less compared to what we have done. Instead of going to grayscale, we thought of explore in the other domains, and this is this RGBILR. R stands for red, G for green, B for blue, I for grayscale or intensity, L for lightness. We measured asked to measure discriminant value, and without power law, it used to choose lightness. When we binarized it, it showed difference. When I applied a power law in the existing method, there is a drastic change in the discriminant, and the plane which is chosen will be different, and we can see the what is the text present in it. In fact, this is low contrast image, which has power law has helped to retrieve what is the text. This nonlinear enhancement of this method and has got 66% word recognition rate on ICDR 2003 data set. This is the first robust reading competition data set. This is the 2011 another reading competition organized. Here I need to mention that these two algorithms proposed were based on computer vision methods. They used awk features to recognize individual characters and club them to form a word, and they provided additionally lexicon, what are all the words present in the data set, to try to get the exact word in the data set. But we haven't used any lexicon, and only passing through the binarized image through the segmentation, we have achieved 66%. And compared to the recent organization, it has improved a lot. So, apart from it, we have once again thought of reducing the computation. For that, we came up with a novel method, midline analysis and propagation of segmentation. Here also we started from the grayscale, from we take a grayscale image, we extract the middle line. The variation in gray values along the middle line is known. We place a window and move the window along the middle row. At center value, we will find the estimate at the center of the window, we will estimate the max and min value and average it to obtain the threshold. From this, we will get two statistics, two statistics, and we obtain, we will estimate the mean and variance for the max value and the min value. Only we have segmented middle line, we have to segment other pixel. For that, we have used two methods, Bayesian classification as well as graph cut. This is the result while classifying the text. These are other popular techniques which used to binary. This is the same results without using lexicon. Using simple approach on segmenting the middle line and propagating the labels, we got 64% and 71.6%. So here we have reduced the computation for segmenting and the binarization. Apart from it, we want to know that what can be achieved without any algorithm by simply manually segmenting word images and passing into a OCR engine. We have done this experiment on 5 different kinds of data sets. WRR represents word recognition rate in that data set. Edit distance measure I explained earlier. The algorithm should have lesser edit distance and higher word recognition rate. So this is what is achievable by normally OCR engine by manually segmenting the word images. So when compared to our methods and best in literature, our methods are better in some of the cases. Best in literature I explained earlier in the table, it uses lexicon. In this ICDR 2003, FAMI is for 2009. SVT is Google Street View text, which was obtained by Google Car. Bond digital image I explained earlier. This best in literature is power law transform, what I explained earlier, and ICDR 2011. We can clearly see that what all the algorithms we have proposed are better than the existing. This is a baseline method which without any pre-processing we passed it to a OCR engine and we got the results. From these results we can see that by proper processing and proper segmentation we can improve the recognition rate. We have proposed simple algorithms for text segmentation. Algorithm can be ported to mobile transform. The crux was gamma correction improves recognition on cropped word images. Thank you.
So what's the one-liner take home from this talk?
Gamma correction, which has been used for displays, can be used for processing in image work.
And it gives good results.
Good.
Sometimes or else?
Go across the different kinds of images. The image data sets comprise of thousands of images, not 10 or 20.
Let's thank the speaker, and that's the end of this session. We will meet here again at 2. So just speak.
So the lunch is in the guest house lounge, and we have one missing printout that you have. So there is a faculty talk of the department ECE from 2 to 2:30. That will be here, but that's missing from that sheet. So let's rejoin at 2 o'clock in this.